Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Monday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky, LeBron James dominates in the Olympic opener for Team USA, and another free agent signs with someone else. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. It's always free, never behind paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube. It's where you can go hang out with over 25,000 subscribers, all of whom, Andy, are very impressed with what LeBron James did Sunday against Serbia in the Olympic opener for Team USA, the first of their official games in the Paris Olympics. Those same people, Andy, those same 25,000 subscribers are also really annoyed with the Lakers because yet another free agent, many of them, maybe not all of them, many of them are annoyed.
I heard from many of those people. I would be an overstatement to say that they are all upset about Tyus Jones going to Phoenix on a veteran's minimum. But I do think, though, whether they were upset about Tyus Jones going to Phoenix or not, they all seemed to recognize like a larger picture that is represented by Tyus Jones going to Phoenix, whether you wanted him to be a Laker or not.
So we will get into that before the end of the show. Also setting up for a little bit of chatter around the Lakers and Jeremy Grant on the Blazers. So we'll maybe get into that a little bit today, but for tomorrow, have a little bit of a scouting report, really dig into whether or not this is true or how much there is behind the concept of Grant. Andy, there are a lot of questions. It's like the perfect like hypothetical trade to make you really sift through all of the different issues that go into the risk and reward for the Lakers, right now, the way they're set up to make the type of trade that Grant would be with players and picks and all that kind of stuff. So if we don't get to that on Monday, it'll definitely come on Tuesday. I want to let everybody know that today's episodes is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I am obviously back from vacation. It was fun to see all the guests that you had on, Andy. A lot of great conversations. We will keep doing that throughout August, just, talking to different people and taking stock as the NBA sort of slows down ahead of training camp. So if you have other guests that you'd like to see on the show, things like that, please do let us know. So LeBron, Andy, it was an impressive 110-84 win for the U.S. in their opener in the Paris games against Serbia. Serbia considered by many to be a medal contender. But the Lakers, as they did in the exhibition season, really beat them up pretty good. And one of the big reasons, LeBron James, 27 minutes, 9 of 13 from the floor, 21 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists, and a steal, a brisk and efficient game, particularly in the second half for LeBron.
Yeah, it's continued a trend where LeBron has been arguably the best player for Team USA. He's unquestionably the face of Team USA, and that was underscored on Friday during the opening ceremonies down the river Seine. It's pronounced Seine, yes?
I believe so.
That the opening ceremonies, there was a ton of rain coming down. And I gotta say, like, even as somebody that does not get super into the Olympics and like if you want to call it patriotism that comes from the idea of all these countries around the world competing at the highest level athletically, the visual, I tweeted this out at Cam Brothers. If you can find this, if you didn't see it in real time or that day, the visual of LeBron at the bow of this ship holding that flag with the rain coming down was undoubtedly quite
for people might have missed it. LeBron was selected, voted by members of Team USA, like not the basketball team, all of it. Him and I believe it was Coco Gauff to be the flag bearers for Team USA, which is a really cool honor.
Yeah, It's pretty awesome. And again, it's consistent with LeBron being really the face and top performer for Team USA. Anthony Davis, this was a quieter game for him against Serbia. He had some foul trouble dealing with Nikola Jokic in the first half, but this game notwithstanding, and AD wasn't bad necessarily, he just wasn't as dominant as he's been in others. LeBron and AD have been two of the most consistently best and most dynamic players for Team USA, which has led to a lot of celebration among Laker fans because it's really cool to see, and B, a lot of, I don't know, resentment to some degree from Laker fans because it's like, what the hell? These two guys are dominating at this level. Why are the Lakers continually 1-out in the playoffs? How hard could it be?
Continually. This is such a weird team.
Or there was a Western Conference Finals, and then there was a gap year where they didn't go to the playoffs at all.
Right. I mean, like, that's the thing about this. Like, this team in this franchise is so hard to evaluate because on the one hand, if you said, yeah, since 2020, we've got a title and a Western Conference Finals appearance, you'd be like, all right, well, that's not bad. There's something to be said for that. You look at it, and when you see LeBron and when you see Anthony Davis, and then you look at the capacity of the Lakers, at least in theory, to create high level teams, you start to get disappointed. And we'll get into this in a second, but it's just really cool. Like, when you see, I know the nuances is not an apples to apples comparison, which we'll talk about in the second segment, but just in a vacuum, to see how dominant LeBron James can still be. He's playing with, not all of the best players in the world, but a tremendously loaded Team USA. And this wasn't what we saw.
Jason Tatum did not play in this game because Kevin Durant returned, and that led to Steve Kerr messing with the rotation a bit because he's putting KD back into the rotation. He blamed himself for Tatum never getting into this game. But the point being, Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton were DNP CDs for Team USA versus Serbia. That's how stacked this team is.
And like, not only that, like, Tatum didn't play, and you can say this, you did blame himself. You can't get everybody in, all that stuff. Halliburton, like, I think has basically been told, like, you're just like a hype man now. And he's cool with it. It seems he's like happy to be there. And I realize he had a bit of a disappointing second half of the season and all that. Tyrese Halliburton is awesome. And he's not going to play.
He's in the old Michael Redd role right now,
basically. And so, I mean, look, I'd be happy to serve as a hype man on that bench, but this wasn't LeBron padding stats. This wasn't LeBron, getting, the team, let's get LeBron some numbers, or let's see if LeBron can have a couple cool moments. And like, LeBron was often the best player on the floor for Team USA on both sides. Like, he had some really good defensive moments, really good offensive moments. And to be able to do that against very good competition, playing with teammates who ought to be better than you by now, like, right? It's just remarkable to watch. And I know people get tired of isn't it amazing what LeBron is doing at age 40? But Andy, isn't it amazing what LeBron James is doing at age 40? I mean, like, it is. It objectively is.
We've said this many times before. There is no template for what LeBron is doing right now in the NBA. There have obviously been guys who've played 20 plus years. There have obviously been guys who've played into their 40s. There have even been guys who've been useful NBA players after 20 seasons or approaching their 40s, whatever. But nobody has ever done it at this level with this type of responsibility in a game as LeBron.
So the performance, though, of LeBron and Anthony Davis, but especially LeBron, and then all of the stuff going on with free agency as teams continue to try to tweak their rosters. We asked got some mailbag responses from people And we will get into the mailbag, which is relevant to the conversation we want to have about LeBron next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Game Time, and some of my favorite memories growing up at St. Louis as a kid involved going to Cardinal games in the summer with friends, watching Ozzie Smith, Willie McGee, Jose Oquendo, and some of my favorite memories as an adult in the summer are in LA at Dodger Stadium with friends. I once watched middle reliever Hong-Chi Kuo hit a home run against the Mets and flip his bat because it was like, that's just what Hong-Chi Kuo does. And if I want tickets to a game, I go to Game Time. It's an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. The Game Time app is easy to browse through to see the upcoming games, pick out any specific games or matchups that you'd love to attend. They got flash deals where you save even more on selected seats ahead of game. Also the zone deals where you save extra when you just choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. In the Game Time, they offer views from all the seats in the venues, and the lowest price guarantee means they will credit 110% of the difference if you find tickets in the same section or row for less. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
LeBron at age 40, if he's even on the Olympic team, like if he's even there, he should be some sort of like player emeritus. Like, you know, he gets on for 10 or 15 minutes, you know, he's there for leadership, he's whatever it might be, but he shouldn't be one of the driving forces for a team to try to win a medal, and he most certainly is. And then when you combine him with Anthony Davis, who has had, you know, you mentioned in the first segment, relatively quite, still had a good, decent game. He just had some foul trouble that kept it from being, you know, genuinely dominant. You combine those two, the way they're playing against, you know, in this Olympic season, and it's got fans asking a lot, like, why can't the Lakers put something, like, look how good these guys are. It's embarrassing that they have so many seasons with the two of them where they can't get out of the first round, or like you mentioned, can't even get in the playoffs. And so many fans are pointing this out.
Well, first of all, side note, before we even get into that question, it was another game where Joel Embiid struggled, particularly the opening 4 or 5 minutes. Joel Embiid was flat out awful. And Anthony Davis has been really, really outplaying him throughout this entire time in Team USA with the exhibition games, and then this game against Serbia. And it's raised a lot of questions about Steve Kerr's starting lineup and, you know, whether Anthony Davis should be starting ahead of Joel Embiid. On the merits, he's absolutely earned that spot over Joel Embiid. Like, I also think at some point Steve Kerr needs to consider this, just beyond the fact that Anthony Davis has been the better player. You have this chemistry and familiarity and, you know, this like secondhand between LeBron and AD that normally does not really get capitalized on at all, because Steve Kerr tends to employ the first unit and second unit in these like big hockey shift style rotations. So you've got this thing with LeBron and AD, who are individually two of the best players performing for this Team USA group, but also together are so good. And I think it is very weird for Steve Kerr not to be looking to capitalize on it at all, especially when Joel Embiid isn't making the case to stay in the starting lineup. So, Side note, at some point, I feel like Steve Kerr needs to pull the trigger on this, because it just feels like he's holding back his own team.
I've seen a few people on the internet who pay closer attention to the sort of the politics of these things and how players get on and off rosters and all that kind of stuff. surmising that perhaps to get Embiid to play for Team USA versus France instead of France, they might have promised him a starting job.
It's certainly possible. I mean, does
that mean he gets to keep it forever? I don't know.
I mean, Embiid's talked about, by the way, too, that part of what led him to choose America was not wanting to look like he was choosing between Cameroon and France. And there's a certain amount of connectivity between them in terms of for Embiid. So he wanted America in part just because it would really be the answer that doesn't piss off or theoretically piss off France and Cameroon. The answer is it's definitely pissing off France because Embiid also gets booed whenever he touches the ball with these games happening in Paris. So it's been kind of the worst of all worlds for Embiid.
Yeah.
You're right that there could be some politics, but at the same time, like, I don't think those politics should override what's best for the team, because if you keep doing that, it actually just makes Embiid look worse.
Right. No, I agree. And it may be, that it doesn't. He played 11 minutes in the game on Sunday. And it may be that, you run with that until it's very clear that you've sort of fulfilled the obligation. It's just, it's sort of like, it makes sense to try to play the Celtics together, play Holiday and Tatum and, those guys together and make that work. Like, there's a lot of different ways to try to do this in different combinations. And Derek White, I should say. And it's I don't envy Kerr and the rest of that coaching staff, because it actually is harder to coach teams like this than I think people give it credit for. There's a reason guys like Drew Holiday end up playing big minutes, who's not a perennial all-star. He's not a first team all NBA performer. There are guys with better resumes, namely Jason Tatum, for example, who are going to play less, but like Holiday, guys like that are critical in part because they're not superstars, because they don't, the ball doesn't stick with them. A Derek White, players like this, you have to have them in an effort to win. I think Kerr will probably, if Embiid still plays this bad as they get into the medal rounds, they'll make some adjustments. Although I guess if you look at some of the Locked On Warriors and Warriors chat boards generally, maybe not. A lot of people question Steve Kerr. So that question though of whether or not this is meaningful, like, can you look at this as a Lakers fan? Should you look at this as a Lakers fan and be like, WTF, look at what we have. How come it doesn't work? I mentioned I don't think it's an apples to apples comparison, looking at like LeBron, for example, and what he can do in the Olympics versus what you need to do in the regular season and what he can do there and into the playoffs. I think you and I are on the same page broadly with this, though.
Yeah, it's not close to apples. I mean, LeBron played 27 minutes against Serbia. That's high for what he's typically done during these Team USA exhibition games. In this first one that's counted, like, he's typically playing about 18 to 22 minutes. He's playing with a group that is either all NBA players, all defense players, all all-star players. It is a super team. So the load that he has to carry and the people that he's working with, these are all the elite of the elite of the elite. And it should be noted, LeBron is doing this after having like a month and a half off, because the Lakers got eliminated from the playoffs
right
before May began. Forget the idea of it being apples and apples. I'm not sure it's a fruit to fruit comparison. Like, it's
this is tailored as perfectly as
it doesn't take away, by the way, from how impressive what LeBron is doing. Yeah, like,
it just doesn't mean it just means it's not terribly relevant for the regular season and the playoffs, set up at NBA. It is remarkable that, like, if you were drafting for what is this, a week and a 2-week tournament or whatever it is, where there's rest on the front end, rest on the back end, the games are, I think, only 40 minutes. Like, they're shorter games anyway.
Yeah.
And LeBron's not going to be playing 37, 38, 39 minutes. There are enough games in there that the competition is certainly until the medal round. Like, no disrespect to South Sudan, who I know pushed Team USA pretty hard in the preliminaries. I don't expect that to happen again in the round robin play, in the pool play. So you run into some difficult games as it goes on, but you need LeBron to crank it up like 5 times over the course of 2 weeks.
Well, okay, put this in
He can do
perspective.
that. And it is amazing that he can play at that level, but it's basically irrelevant, I think, to me, in terms of how that translates to the NBA.
Here's the example I would use. Look how much it visibly took out of LeBron. It was obvious on the court the way he went balls out for the IST. So it just speaks to why, again, what he's doing is amazing and should be marveled at, but it is not apples to apples for the Lakers season, even if, again, Rob Pelinka needs to make some roster moves.
Right. And the same is true of Anthony Davis. Tyus Jones going to Phoenix. Minimum deal. Some fans got mad. That's next. So, busting out the mailbag, Andy, there were a couple things here that I think are relevant to this. The questions we got about free agency, and this from Gareth Dowell 6352. Are the Lakers still the free agent destination they were widely considered to be? I'm concerned that they aren't, and worry what this means post LeBron. Tony Fish on Twitter at Tony Fish said, "Let's just be honest. The Lakers used to be a significant destination for several reasons. Now they are a profit-based investment for the buses that don't really matter in the league." Now, I definitely don't think we're at the place where the Lakers don't matter, but Tyus Jones goes to Phoenix, and it's not even Phoenix chose the Phoenix over the Lakers, because there was no indication that the Lakers were pursuing Jones. They don't have a roster spot for him. They would have to clear. He signed for $3.5 million, about $3.3 million, I believe it is. So, like, just clearing Cam Reddish, for example, would not have been enough for the Lakers to sign Jones and stay underneath the second apron. So, like, they would have needed to clear more than like a salary dump of Jones or Maxwell Lewis or someone like that. So it was a little trickier. And again, I'm not sure. I don't think they were even trying to get him. But that said, Andy, when you keep seeing good players come off the board with the Lakers either not being able to try or not trying, or in some cases trying and being rejected, it's starting to pile up for people. And you get emails and tweets like the ones I just read.
Yeah. In a vacuum, would it be great to have Tyus Jones on a minimum deal with the Lakers? Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
if I could swap out Tyus Jones for Gabe Vincent, even with knowing the differences in defensive ability, for example, Vincent's in theory better defender, like, that's an upgrade for the Lakers, I think.
Depending on what you want, right? If you're looking for a pure floor general, yeah, Tyus Jones is an upgrade. If you're looking for the defensive ability, Jones is, I don't think, as good a defender as
you can make the argument. You can make the argument is really what I'm getting at.
Look, you can make the argument for it, and I mean, you could make, frankly, the same argument perhaps for Tyus Jones, even if Tyus Jones was getting $11 million a year, like Gabe Vincent is. But what I think gets lost in this is I don't know how much the Lakers were actively pursuing Tyus Jones. I would like to think that if Tyus Jones really was an option for the Lakers and said, look, this is the vet minimum salary that I get, figure it out, I want to be a Laker, they would have found a way to figure it out, even if it meant, attaching more than you would ideally want to offload Christian Wood or whoever.
Right.
I actually think, and this is without any reporting, any sourcing, this is just me exercising what I think is common sense. And I tweeted this out at Cam Brothers the day that it happened. My guess, and again, truly it's a guess, the biggest impediment for the Lakers getting Tyus Jones wasn't a lack of roster spots, but the better opportunity to reestablish his market value in Phoenix. He is likely to start, and the Suns' overall backcourt depth is way thinner than in LA. And I said afterwards, don't get me wrong, like the Lakers need to figure out the guaranteed contract situation because it's a layer of complication. But like I felt about Gary Trent Jr. going to Milwaukee or Spencer Dinwiddie going to Dallas on those minimum deals, I felt like the players in those situations, they're all looking to reestablish their market value. They're going to pick first and foremost based on their role and their playing time. And Phoenix, Dallas, Milwaukee, for those three guards with the Lakers roster as currently constructed, those are better places for them. Like Tyus Jones is going to start in Phoenix. He's one of 2 point guards on the roster. They don't have a ton of like, you have to play guards on the roster, period. Like Devin Booker will often play small forward. Bradley Beal will often play small forward. Like Josh Okogie for defensive purposes will sometimes just be out there to guard up. Tyus Jones's role is going to be much greater for somebody looking to showcase himself than it would be in LA. Like I was talking a little bit on Twitter with Claire DeLune, who was on the show earlier last week while you were gone, Brian. And she had noted on Twitter that Tyus Jones would have been a great option for the Lakers in the event that D'Lo was traded. I was like, look, if I'm Tyus Jones, I don't join this team on the assumption that D'Lo is going to be traded. I join when I see D'Lo's on another team.
Right.
Like I'm not doing that with the idea of, oh, it'll eventually work out. No, I'm trying to get my bag next offseason.
I think the frustrating part is Lakers fans are smart enough to know that there's, objectively speaking, if to use the Team USA analogy, you're just piling up talent. Like, is it better to have Jones on your roster even if you don't know exactly what you're going to do with him, because he's a good player? Yeah, sure, there's no question. Like you say, Jones himself gets a vote. But it's one of these things where if you look at it and say, there's really nowhere for him to play, this, that, whatever. But you you could look at the back of the roster and be like, realistically, like we've got a bunch of good players. Kind of like, honestly, with you, we felt to some degree about the Lakers going into last season where you're like, there's just not a lot of room. There will be some good players who don't play because like you can only play so many guys. But you look at the back end of this roster now and, Jalen Hood Schifino is still rehabbing. Jared Vanderbilt actually could still be, he's on the back of the roster, but he's actually potentially still not fully healthy. But then, go back to those other guys. Maxwell Lewis showed in the summer that he is not ready to be a contributor on a good NBA team.
He wasn't ready to be a contributor on a good summer league team, to be honest. No, he was very bad in the summer league.
In moments, but overall it was disappointing, at least to me. And, you look at Cam Reddish, who I don't think is a particularly playable guy, and Jackson Hayes is questionable at times and not always playable. Back end, he's there's not a lot on the back end of the roster. Bronny James, obviously there too, that you look at and say, well, after player number 10 or after number 9, there's some talent there. Like there's just they have too many guys who just aren't likely to contribute on good teams. And so when a player like Jones goes, even if it's somebody the Lakers weren't even trying to get, it's still frustrating.
Yeah. I think it's more about what Tyus Jones represents in terms of the Lakers just feeling stuck right now for reasons that if you think it's Rob Pelinka's ineptitude, if you think it's they don't have the contracts that they need that are really like, it would be helpful if Christian Wood made $12 million a year on an expiring deal. Like the Lakers would have a much easier time offloading him at that money, or Cam Reddish or Jackson Hayes or Maxwell Lewis, Hood Schifino. Like all of their tradable size contracts are all guys that are not purely expendable. And the guys who are purely expendable don't make enough money to be impactful in a trade. And you look around too, the league's been really quiet. There's a lot of speculation that things are going to stay pretty dormant until Utah figures out what's going on with Lauri Markkanen. There's also some mystery about what's happening with the Pelicans and Brandon Ingram, and that could lead to a lot of teams just kind of being quiet right now until they see the dominoes start to fall and everybody figures out, can I be either a direct part of these trades, ancillary part of it, part of the trickle-down effect, whatever. But the Lakers feel stuck right now to a lot of fans, and I get why that is frustrating, even if in a vacuum, I'm not sure they've missed out on much that they really should have been in on in the first place. It's just what it all feels like.
And to tie it back to that first segment, we can wrap here. And Mike Richmond's going to join us to talk Jeremy Grant for Tuesday's show from Locked On Blazers. LeBron's, what LeBron and AD are doing at this thing is reflective of both why they are still so tantalizing and why the Lakers are, in fact, an interesting team and relevant and all these things, because they have two players who are just that good. And it's also a reminder of how they're not there yet. Like, as a team, the roster around them isn't good enough, and how challenging it is to build one that can get them through the challenges of a regular season and a playoffs and all that, and put them in a position where they can dominate when it's really, in those big moments, like they are for Team USA. Like, it is both the promise and what makes them interesting and tantalizing, and also what makes them problematic. And so this is, I think, an example of that. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 25,000 subscribers. Leave us questions, leave us comments. As you saw today, we do use them on the show. Mike Richmond coming up tomorrow, talking Jeremy Grant. We'll see everyone then.